Welcome to Keeping Up with Trends. This is Fed Razak, senior trading strategist here at CMTrading, and I'm messed it up.
Okay.
Let's do it
It's
again.
okay. Whenever you're ready.
How does it go? And
Senior
I'm
trading
joined.
strategist,
No,
CM
I'm
Trading,
joined.
joined
I'm
by your
joined. I'm
host.
joined with Sergio Davids.
There you go.
Go.
Oh, just go. It's recording.
Welcome to Keeping Up with Trends. This is Fed Razak, senior trading strategist here at CMTrading, and I'm joined with your host Sergio Davids. How are you?
I'm good, man. Very good. Good to be alive. It's awesome here in South Africa for a change. We've just won the Rugby World Cup. So,
Hey,
hey,
congratulations!
thanks, man. Thanks, man. It is very
Now that's a
difficult.
real man sport.
Oh yes, it has been it's been very challenging. We pretty much scraped by our last three matches, as in literally won our last three matches in the World Cup by 1 point. So it's been very stressful to be a Springbok fan, but they did it,
What's their
and I'm happy
biggest
for them.
rivalry? Is there a country that they're
New Zealand have been our rivals. Well, ever since we allowed back into international rugby. There's a lot of respect, by both teams. But yeah, they are rivals, and it's awesome to face them once again in a Rugby World Cup, just as we did back in 2020. So yeah, it's been awesome. And now all eyes is on the Proteas, our national cricket team, who are still competing, and here's hoping they win again.
cricket is a very competitive sport.
Oh yes, played by millions. I would almost argue it's bigger than rugby. You won't think that. I mean, it's what is it? India's national sport. So you
Well,
can
I
imagine
mean,
if 1+ billion people love a
right.
sport, it's going
So,
to be huge.
I mean, that's really the what's the word? The impact that the United Kingdom,
Oh yeah, they
the
left
British
behind quite a
Empire,
big
had on
legacy.
all its.
Yeah, all of the colonies mostly play rugby and cricket. Although rugby, I don't know, for whatever reason, didn't make it that big in India. But definitely hockey. I attended a hockey match in in New Delhi that had about
Ice
30,000
hockey.
people. No, not ice hockey. Field hockey. It's insanely popular,
I mean, I
especially
used
in
to play
India.
floor hockey and
Oh
roller
yeah,
hockey. Yeah. I'm like that was my sport. I mean, I couldn't play ice hockey,
yeah.
uh, but that was really my sport.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
wow. It's believe it or not, in South Africa we do have um a competitive circuit in ice hockey. In fact, a mate of mine used to play ice hockey competitively when he was in high school. So yeah, it's not that foreign to us, but yeah, it's nowhere on the scale of the United States or Russia. But yeah, cool to know you're good on the ice. Okay.
Yeah, that was a fun sport. That was really a fun sport.
So I'd love to chat to you about competitive sports and rugby and cricket, but I suppose our listeners want to know what's happening in the financial markets.
Let's
So
do it.
FOMC rate decision, or rather non-decision, as they've left rates unchanged. So what does that mean for the markets?
So it's not a non-decision,
I
even
suppose
if
even if they left it unchanged is a decision,
it's a.
but
I mean, it's a proactive decision.
right,
What I mean, the markets traded and rallied afterwards higher. Specifically, the FANG stocks were the ones that went fastest, highest. But he did hint, Powell, who's the chairman,
yeah,
did hint that he was looking that he was going to, stop increasing rate hikes, which was a positive light. So, are
yeah.
we at the end of the tunnel of
Well, that's
this?
the million-dollar question, isn't it? This is a good sign, right?
For sure. Um, both because it means that inflation is somewhat tapered off, um, and I mean we're hoping that he'll even decrease it in the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months.
Jeez, can you imagine? I mean, after what, 2 years of persistent interest rate hikes and high inflation,
But
you
like
know,
we said last time, I think we find ourselves in the 1980s all over again. And so to get us back into the 90s, you know, he has to reset the clock.
I mean, it's going to take, hopefully, that's going to take some pressure off consumers. I don't need to tell you how goods have gotten pretty expensive just in the last 6 months alone.
Right.
I
And the
mean,
interest rates to carry on credit cards have also gone through the roof.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of people have been crippled by that. I mean, even something as small as I used to enjoy this specific brand of like instant coffee. It's like this hazelnut instant coffee. And I literally have seen it increase by about 10, 20 rand every month for 6 months. So
Wow.
it's just yeah, literally doubled in price.
Wow.
I mean, that's crazy, right?
It is. But it's also, a sign of the times for coffee as well. I mean, coffee is a commodity that also did appreciate tremendously.
Yeah.
Uh, and all staple goods, really all staple goods. And if you think about it, it's shipment of coffee, which is dependent on oil. Um,
That's true.
and so it's a few things that all kind of converge at one time. And I don't know how you're doing financially, but usually speaking, in these type of environments, it takes time for our incomes to actually reflect the adjustments of where we are at.
Yeah. So, what advice do you have for traders, considering the FOMC decision?
Okay, so in terms of the FOMC decision, I think we're in a good space right now. And you see the FANG stocks are actually responding positively to it. The equity markets are doing well. So there's volatility in the market, which is really a great, great environment to be in, to be trading this type of environment. So um, you look at US stocks, focus instead of Forex symbols, focus on US stocks and US indices to trade them because they are trading right now.
Awesome. And speaking of FANG stocks, one of them, probably the biggest, is releasing their earnings today. Apple,
Yes.
a almost $3 trillion company, releasing their Q3 earnings today, November 2nd. So, when I think of Apple and I look back on their earnings, I mean, the last 2 quarters, sure, they beat estimates. But back in February, they missed it by quite a considerable sum. I mean, they had a forecast of 121 billion and they only returned 117. And that was quite a shock because you can imagine with, a year's worth of high interests and high inflation, how it could affect a brand as retail heavy as Apple. So, what are your predictions for its earnings?
So, a couple of things about Apple. It is coming out with a new iPhone 15.
Oh yeah,
So, moving forward, I wonder how much that's going to be that much more adding to their bottom line.
yeah.
Um, it's an expensive phone. It's not a cheap phone.
Well,
Uh,
then
be-
again, all of Apple products are
are
relatively
expensive.
expensive,
Yeah,
and yet they remain on top.
because they're the best value for the money. And once you're an Apple person, you're an Apple person.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's very much still an aspirational brand for a lot of people. If you own Apple products, you've made it. I think that's a lot of
I
the perception.
maybe I don't know. Maybe that's like it in Africa, but in the U.S., it seems like it's a standard product. Um, either Apple or Android.
Yeah.
And the competition is getting quite fierce. I mean, there are a lot of competing companies with Apple products. However, they still seem to stay on top and
Yeah.
keep on
Well,
creating.
I will be watching whether or not the big, moves by the Chinese government against Apple will affect them. I mean, we spoke, I think it was a month or two ago, where it was announced the Chinese government would no longer allow government employees to have Apple phones or Apple products. They had to buy local, which is a very strong move to support local, Chinese businesses, sure, but it's quite a shock for, Apple. You're talking about millions of government workers just suddenly having to end their Apple contracts. And Apple being, I mean, China being, Apple's biggest market, and I think they producer as well. That's quite a hit.
I wonder also because now that Apple has moved its production facility from China to the US,
Well,
if that's
back, yeah,
because, and is that because then they can't control, or monitor what's going on into these Apple phones that they feel
yeah,
threatened by it?
yeah. Let's not, Chinese surveillance has been a big thing, and the US has taken big strides in trying to curb that. So it could be. So I know, whenever it comes to earnings, you like to wait, you know, the day after or see where the trend is, right? So what advice do you have for traders regarding Apple earnings and how to
So,
trade Apple specifically?
okay, so you ask me this every time we have an earnings thing, and I
Yeah,
always say never go into a number with a position.
right.
It's right now trading at 173. It's off of its highs of 197. So one or two options. Either they're going to say everything is in line, and we're seeing so far Amazon doing very well. We saw Facebook doing very well. Microsoft is okay. It's on its upper range, but it's not flying to its all-time highs. AMD is coming back from the dead. Google has been relatively weak considering, they're coming out with their earning reports. It wasn't as positive as
Hmm.
anticipated. So we're left to Apple. So Apple is really dependent on its iPhone for most of its sales.
Yeah.
However, it's a question whether or not some of the other diversified businesses that they carry will make up those holes until this anticipated iPhone
I
comes
mean,
out
you're right.
and hits the bottom line. I mean, it did come out; it has to hit the bottom line.
Look, Apple's got a lot of fingers in a lot of different pies. I mean, they're making movies, they're making TV series. They've got a very expensive VR headset now, you know. So it's a company that has changed so much in the last 5 years. I mean, there was a time when, Apple was synonymous with just the iPhone, and
Mm.
now, it's a tech company, and there's a reason why it's almost it's $2.7 trillion. Is it a company that's too big to fail?
Um, say I don't know what that means anymore. Is it too big to fail? Um, because yeah, when you had Enron, it was too big to fail. But today, what does too big to fail mean? Like it can fail because it's so big? What does that mean? Unpack it.
Look, for me, can it absorb back-to-back quarterly losses? And
Yeah,
if you're
because
worth 2.7
it's
trillion,
got
yeah,
enough cash in there for
yeah.
to keep it alive for a very, very long
But
time.
that's what my definition. It's got that security. I mean, a lot of companies don't do that. They don't plan for, a rainy day. I mean, I only have to look at our South Africa's local, our national airline, which after back-to-back losses couldn't absorb it, and there's now
Well,
even
airline
talks to
business
have it.
is very different. Airline
Yeah,
business is very,
but
very different.
even in this retail sector, I mean, if you look back on Apple's earnings, it's just incredible. Like
For the
even the
past
quarters
10
that they've
years.
missed, when they've beaten it quite considerably.
It is a very it's a very powerful company, and knows how to recreate itself, even almost a decade after its founder has, you know, has passed on. So I think that that's really their niche. Their niche is hitting a certain target audience that has such brand loyalty to it. Because I know, like, in my household, there are certain people in my household that are completely Apple people.
Yeah.
And, there's a kind of a stereotype of what type of person that is. Because they
Well,
really,
yeah.
they really care about their product. They really
Well,
care. It's
well,
it's more
let
than
me
just
ask.
a phone.
Well, let me ask you this, right? When you know, the new iPhone, right? You intending to get it?
I don't know that I'm ready to spend $1,000. I might get.
But your next phone be an Apple?
So watch this, okay? My wife has an Apple. I have an
Right.
Android. I have a
You have an
Samsung.
Android. Okay. See, now I'm an Android person.
But the next
Like,
watch, I actually do want to get an Apple so that I could sync my calendar with my wife because we have stuff for the kids, and
okay.
I don't like sometimes like, and and yeah, I I'm not. When I say I'm an Android person, I've gotten used to using Android
Yeah.
more out of habit because if I like it or don't like it. But because my wife uses the Apple and I see some of
Right.
the software behind it, it's a much more solid and much more natural and much more like it's an extension of yourself as opposed to this is a machine,
Sure. Look, Apple's become,
if that makes sense.
it's more, it's like a lifestyle. I mean, I know friends of mine that have iPads, Apple TV, iPhone, you know, and then they've got a Mac at home. Everything about them is, Apple. But it's more for them. It's more like they love the brand. Whereas I'm not that brand loyal to Samsung. It just happens to be that I'm loyal to, an Android based systems, and I happen to have a Samsung phone. So with me, I'm always looking around for a good deal, but that's Android based. But I've never considered Apple. It's always just been expensive, and even if I get an Apple iPhone, it's not going to work with my PC, which I predominantly use. For me, it's either or. So it's interesting that you're gonna go towards Apple. Maybe you'll change. Maybe you'll get a Mac. What do you think?
Um,
Do you think you'll go that far?
to get a Mac.
Yeah, iPad, Mac, live the Apple brand.
See like this happens to be a conversation we're having at home right now because of my 17-year-old son.
Yeah.
It's very dedicated to to
Oh
Apple.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, at a very young age. He's he's a big Steve Jobs fan, very
Right.
big Steve Jobs fan, and
Okay. Cool.
so he kind of makes an argument that when are you going to the software you're using every time he comes to my computer, he's always complaining. Um, and I hear it, I see it, but I'm so used to this system, this machine that to now switch it, the company has to switch it, right?
Right.
Predominantly, I would say most companies and most government agencies are running on regular, PC,
Yeah. Android,
uh,
Windows. Yeah.
and using Microsoft. And now that Microsoft is owned a good chunk of Apple, it's another aspect of it. So we'll see. I mean, I don't see any in the foreseeable future that Apple's going to be that mainstream. I think Apple serves that certain niche, and they're
Yeah.
going to continue, whether it's the phone users or whether it's the Mac, or whether it's the Vision Pro, or whether it's the watch or the AirPods. It's all like to them, it's all an extension of one product. I think.
Good marketing. Love in the Apple ecosystem
No, but it's not just marketing; it's also brand development, and it's learning to build from one brand to the next.
and do so successfully.
Yeah. and do
And
so successfully. That's the key, to do it successfully.
and on that note, I think we'll leave things there. Thank you so much, Fred, for your awesome trading advice.
Pleasure. Meet you next time.
Cool. I'll see you on the next one.